the show, let's see what happened this week.
Yeah, well, nothing new, but something new to talk about. We have to get into COVID-19 because cases are rising across the United States, especially in the South, including in my home state of Florida, the Carolinas, Utah, Texas, Alabama, Arkansas, Arizona. Sounds like that's almost every A state.
Yeah, see, on the contrary, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut are in relatively good shape. They actually want to keep it that way, no surprise, so they issued a travel advisory asking people coming from those hot states to quarantine themselves for 14 days. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo actually said he will fine people who break quarantine up to $10,000.
Oh boy, I have a Florida idea. Become an enemy of the state here. And actually, Dr. Fauci has recommended that some states ease back on reopening, and some are actually listening. California's Disneyland opening has been postponed. That's very sad. And now people are calling for Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida to follow suit.
Yeah, see, in Florida, SeaWorld and also Universal theme parks have been open since the beginning of June, I believe, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then Disney World could open as scheduled in mid-July, even though there is a petition going on from their employees, thousands of them, signing, hey, don't open so quickly. We don't feel safe yet going back to work.
Well, a lot of them are already back at work, but they don't feel safe having guests there. So even if the park doesn't open, the NBA, get this, is playing all their games there. They're set to arrive at Wide World of Sports at Disney World on July 7th, where they will practice and play until the playoffs, which are set to start on August 17th.
Yeah, well, let's hope the players to be safe, stay in the bubble, just do their thing, and they won't have to contact with fans or reporters, but there are no repercussion in place if they go outside the bubble.
I've heard they're trying magic bands, tracking them, etc., and this might be important because the players right now are getting tested for the coronavirus, and no surprise, a lot of them are coming back positive. So every day we see a headline about a new NBA player positive. Yeah. So high risk.
You are not immune, even if you're that athletic.
Yeah, no, and imagine all that sweat rolling around. I don't know, but we're all dying for some sports, and we could use some distraction from the boredom.
I could use some sports.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, a lot of stuff in the news out of the Supreme Court.
Absolutely.
And our first guest is here to talk about that. He's the Deputy Director, Rodrigo. Your father's name is Dexter Lehtinen, right? Is that how I say it correctly? Your last name?
It's such an impossible to pronounce last name. No worries. Heng-Lehtinen, like you're running late to something.
Lehtinen. Got it. Hey, welcome to the show. Look, so much actions out of the Supreme Court. Explain to me very quickly, what does it mean for the average person?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here. Well, the Supreme Court case was such a huge victory for LGBT people. Basically, what they said was LGBTQ people are protected from employment discrimination. Normally, when you're talking about the Supreme Court, it is very complicated and boring, but this one gets to be just a total easy headline. It was that big of a win for us.
I mean, I think a lot of our friends, our age and younger, where we're all like social media, oh, this is a huge thing. This is a huge milestone. But tell me quickly, what does it mean for people who are not gay, who are not transgendered?
Well, it doesn't change a lot for people who are not gay or transgender. But I mean, many people who are straight and non-trans, you still have friends and family and neighbors who are LGBTQ, right? And I think that when anyone is protected from discrimination, we are all safer. In places like New York City, there were already protections, but in half of the country, there were no explicit protections. So now that's fixed. Now the Supreme Court said that you cannot fire someone or refuse to hire them simply because they happen to be transgender or they happen to be bisexual or whatever the case may be. Yeah. We still have to fight to extend this into other areas of the law, but winning on employment is really tremendous.
Yeah, can we talk about that a little bit? Is there anything left? Is there anything we need to work on for workplace protections for the LGBTQ community?
Yes, really, one of the big things that's left is public spaces. So when you think about parks, hotels, restaurants, even things like homeless shelters, I mean, there's so many places that are considered public spaces. We still need protections there. But the other thing you should know is that even though the Supreme Court ruling was about employment, it actually will eventually extend to housing and to healthcare and to education, just because the way the law is written about discrimination is the same in all those areas. So it's kind of like if you win on one, you win on all. So it'll take a little bit of time to go through the courts, but eventually we're totally going to win on housing, on schools, things like that, which is incredible. But we still need protections in public spaces like parks. And that's why we need the Equality Act. That'll take an act of Congress to make sure we have protections everywhere.
And speaking of Congress, your mother was the first Cuban American Republican congressman. And when you came out in Miami, it was a really big deal. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
What was that like?
Yeah, that's right. Her name's Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, another hard hyphenated last name. And yeah, first Cuban American elected and also first Latina of any national origin, first Latina ever elected to Congress. She was Republican. So a lot of people think, oh my gosh, they must be anti-LGBTQ rights. But really, I mean, more and more Republicans are saying that they should support LGBTQ people because we're just normal people like anyone else. And my mom, thankfully, was one of those folks. I mean, for her, she was like, you know what? You're still my child. Just because you happen to be transgender doesn't change that. Family is family no matter what. So I'm really grateful for her support. A lot of transgender people like me don't get that support from their family. So we tried to be really open about it to encourage other families to support their kids too.
Well, you can't get between a Cuban mother and her child.
Her
So I don't
mother
think
is
anything
very
could have
loving.
changed her mind about you, Rodrigo.
Yeah.
So where do we find
It's
out
true.
more about you and your organization, of course?
Oh, yeah. Well, I work with the National Center for Transgender Equality. Obviously, I'm openly transgender, and I'm really trying to make sure that other transgender people get the same kind of support and affirmation that I got. So at NCTE, we work to change policies. We work on things like the Equality Act to make sure that we get protections in public spaces. But we also work, there's a website. Great. You can see there a guide for unique needs trans people have under COVID-19. There are some big things there because a lot of us face discrimination in healthcare and might be reluctant to get a COVID-19 test, but we're really, really encouraging people to seek medical care when you need it. Do not delay just because you happen to be transgender. If you face any issues, reach out to us. We can help, but definitely get the kind of medical care that you need and deserve.
Yeah, last thing, Rodrigo, how are you celebrating Pride Month?
Well, we are so excited that the Supreme Court helped us celebrate Pride Month, and we're doing a lot of virtual events like this. You know, normally we'd be in person, and now we're all trying to get creative, figure out how to do it online. But so thrilled to be able to do things like this to still be able to connect together.
Well, Rodrigo, I'll tell you what, when the world is normal, please come, because we have a lot of things to discuss.
We have a lot of things to talk to you about.
I would love that. Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Whew, he's fun.
He is really fun.
All right.
We have another fun guest.
We have another fun guest continuing with the conversation of LGBTQ pride. We have Veronica Carrera. She is a writer, a sales manager, and your friend.
And our first in-person guest since March 15th. How are you?
Came back to the studio.
Good to see you
What's
both.
going on?
So tell us about your new book.
Well, so the title of the book is Mormon, Gay, and Araman, A Remarkable Journey to Self-Acceptance and Love.
Wow.
And what this book is about is really about letting go of anything that in your life, any story, any circumstances, any dogmas that no longer serves us. It's truly about letting go of a life that no longer honors your soul. And is about a journey that starts with courage, transformation, and ends with healing.
Yeah. See, Veronica, it's so brave to make that kind of transition. And a lot of people say, oh, I want to do it too. But if you and you know, your fellow, you know, people who share this similar kind of experience, they're like, well, I've been told all my life I'm different. I just have to be careful about things. What do you say to them to take that first step?
Because you were different in so many ways, right? Being Mormon in Ecuador,
Yeah.
you know, immigrating at a late age to the United States, having to come out, you know, being a minority in this country, you know, very unique experience.
So
also
many
rising through the
aspects,
corporate ranks. I mean, your story is very compelling. How do you embrace being different and celebrate it?
Yes, and that is exactly what the book is about. It's really, and obviously it's not easy. You have to come to terms with the idea that the life and the stories that you were told is not really, they're not really true. That you have to come to terms that at the end of all of this is only love, and you have to learn to love yourself, and that is probably the most important goal and one we should have. And when it comes back to the book, for instance, the titling itself, like you said, how do you get to that point that you accept yourself, right? Mormon, gay, and Iron Man in itself. And I want to explain this because the Iron Man, right, is basically how the story is framed. And
it's the hardest, for people who don't know what the Ironman is, it is the hardest. What is it? It's a marathon, a 100-mile bike ride, and how long of a swim?
I'll tell you. So it's about a 140-mile race. It's the longest triathlon race in the world. It takes about 17 hours to complete. That's the maximum amount of time. So the book uses this race as a metaphor, and it frames the story of me growing up as a Mormon, becoming a Mormon missionary, and then spiritual leader in the Mormon church, and having to come to terms with being gay in a church that believes that being gay or being homosexual is a sin next to murder. So the whole journey is a journey of transformation and finding a place where you learn that all those stories that you have been told all your life, then you have to let them go. You have to shed the fear, the shame, everything, so that you get to love.
I feel like I shouldn't even be asking you this, and apologize if it's like rude or anything. I'm very curious to know that, you're gay and then you're part of the Mormon church. I'm sure you get asked all the time, how can you be this way? And then you still believe in your faith.
Well, I actually left the church when I was 37 years old. So I struggled through it my whole life. I loved my faith. I have so much to be grateful for. It taught me a lot of my values, but there was a point that I could no longer live with being gay and being Mormon. So I had to let something go. And the act of letting something go was really about choosing myself. It was choosing me.
That's so hard, and I wish you hadn't had to have made that choice.
Yeah.
Veronica, you rose through the corporate ranks, and that's a part of your story. Tell me about that. How did you do it? As a female
As a
immigrant,
woman
struggling with her
immigrant.
sexuality, religious minority that people have some odd opinions about as well, right? How did you embrace being different and leverage that into a sustainable career?
I think I owe a lot to it, to my mom, my grandma, my family that put education first. There was never a doubt in my mind when I came here when I was 16 and I didn't speak a word of English. And then you have to sit in a class where they're studying Shakespeare and you have to what are they talking about? But the determination that I had to have to truly do well in school, eventually finish college, and understand that I had to honor my family, honor the values that they taught me, and that no matter what, I was going to succeed. And it's that determination, that resilience that we have to have as immigrants in this country.
So Julia's a sports reporter, so she's going to ask you a little about your your athletic.
New sports shows
go.
trying to be a bit interviewing a lot of Olympians. What do you play, and what was your journey like?
So when I was in Ecuador, I competed nationally in pentathlon. And I was number one in disc and javelin. But usually I placed third in running. It was never my forte, but I competed nationally. It was wonderful to grow up that way. So as an adult, the athlete in me never left me. So I started doing marathons. I did one in South Africa. It was probably one of the most amazing experiences of my life. And then I realized, in South Africa, actually, someone said, why don't you do an Ironman? And my book starts even with that question, right? Of someone in South Africa, one of the athletes asking me, you should do an Ironman. And I was like, what is that? It's 140 miles. It takes probably about 17 hours. This is crazy. But I ended up doing it.
I guess that's not a challenge after everything you've been through.
Exactly.
I feel like I could make it about a mile before I died.
I have had Ironman finishers on my show before, and they described it as brutal, a lot of endurance. How did that kind of endurance help you after you came to the U.S. and then people tell you, not sure about somebody like you can be here and do everything that you do? How did it help you?
It's interesting because I came to the United States first when I was 16. I did my Ironman when I was in my early 40s, right? But I think for me, I was back then it was about doing the impossible and not allowing anyone to tell me that I couldn't do it.
Seems like you're addicted to that, aren't you? You have a little impossible addiction problem.
Yeah.
No. And thank you for mentioning that. You know why? Because it was a very healing experience to do it. It was powerful. It was healing. It was about your mind overcoming your body. But now, since then, it's being about more about going inside of myself and understanding that it's okay to be still and that I have an infinite value that comes from my Creator. And it's about acceptance and stillness. And at the same time, continuing my athlete journey, but in a way that is not about proving anything. I don't have anything more to prove.
Because you already proved it.
And it's more where I am in life right now.
That sounds
about love.
incredibly peaceful and a lot better than the journey, isn't it? It's about
But
the
all led to it. All of it. Everything that happens in our lives happens for us, not to us. And every single experience that you have had has led you to where you are today. And now I feel this call where I feel like I have found a lot of healing in my life. How do I provide that to others? And that's why I thought I have to have courage to tell my story, because it takes a lot of vulnerability to do that, to disclose everything about your life. But I also know that in the Mormon community, the suicide rate for LGBT people is really, really high. So there's no way that I need to stay in silence. I need to do something about it and save lives.
Yeah, what you said, what happens in life happens for you, not to you. Mm-hmm. I would imagine some of our viewers may not feel that yet, but I hope everybody gets to that point.
Yeah, it gets better, folks. Veronica, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with us. We look forward to reading the book.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you
So
for
good to see
being
you.
here. Very good to see you.
Wow, great conversation.
Hey, thank you for telling everybody my sports credential.
I love you.
All right, moving on. Did you know that millions of Americans qualify for free internet, but they don't necessarily know about it?
And let me tell you, internet is life, Julia. You wouldn't be able to watch this without internet. Matthew Johnson, the co-CEO and co-founder of TruConnect, is here to explain free internet, Matthew?
Yeah, what's that?
Yes, it's not too good to be true.
This isn't a trick? We're not getting punked here?
No, it's not a trick. It's not a trick. And certainly for millions of Americans in the United States, what's amazing is that they don't even know about this program. And that's part of the reason I'm here today, is really start getting the word out that this is an amazing program that unfortunately is not as well known as it should be. And so if you like, I can describe how the program
would you
works.
Please.
Yes. Okay. So the program is under a federal program called Lifeline, and this is managed by both the federal government and individual state governments. And what it provides for those who qualify, and this is typically individuals who are underserved, so individuals who are at a certain income level, perhaps on a government sustenance program like SNAP or Medicaid, will automatically qualify for this program. And what it provides is a free service plan for wireless broadband. So in our case, as a company, many of the individuals out there would qualify to receive this smartphone, which includes not only a service plan for free, which means free talk and text minutes, including a certain amount of free broadband access, but within this product is a built-in hotspot that allows you to then connect to other devices to actually have internet access at, in our case, probably 4G LTE speeds. If you're using Wi-Fi, obviously the speeds are much higher. And so it's a terrific program. Millions and millions of Americans, in fact, by recent estimates, there's probably 40 to 50 million individuals in the United States who qualify for the service but have not yet enrolled in the program.
Can you give me a cutoff? I make less than this much a year, and I probably qualify.
On both federal and state websites, you'll see that typically poverty lines as to where you will qualify. A very rough estimate is if you are on either SNAP or on Medicaid, which are obviously two low-income programs nationally, you automatically qualify. So if you're on either one of those, you're automatically qualified. You can go to TruConnect.com and see what service plans we offer for free. And in California in particular, because the program, frankly, is a bit more generous, we actually offer this smartphone, which we manufacture for free for individuals who qualify for the service. Outside of California, the program's a little bit different. But what has changed with COVID-19 and everything that's happening with unemployment in the U.S. right now is that you can actually qualify for this program, whereas maybe a year ago you would not have qualified for the program. So both the federal government and state governments have eased many of the requirements to actually qualify for Lifeline. So please go to TruConnect.com to see if you may now qualify.
Yeah, what about...
I have a question, Julia. Matthew, these were the... I read this about this. So this administration has continued to support these, even though these were called the Obama phones.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
You want to get into
we don't
that?
have to make it political, but please tell us about that.
I'm actually glad you're asking that question, because this actually gets my back up a little bit. So.
No, it's fine. That's what we're here to do. It's not an attack. It's more of
I'm actually very happy you're bringing this up, because this gets me so frustrated when people start talking about the Obama phone, when the fact of the matter is this program is providing high-speed internet access to those individuals in this country who need it. As you said in the very beginning of the program, how can you imagine, particularly some of your younger viewers, how could you imagine living without internet? And you've got tens of millions of people in the U.S. right now living without it. And that's both in urban settings and in rural settings. The current administration has very much used the Obama phone name and metric to really undermine the program. And that's incredibly frustrating, because the program is meant to serve those most in need, and to kind of use politicizing and names to try to undermine the program. It's completely ridiculous. And a lot of the issues that occurred in the program back in the early 2010s have actually been fixed. So the fact that that's a common mantra of the current administration and many Republicans, it is immensely aggravating as a business owner serving this community that this program works. Just let the program run. You have all the requirements you need to manage the program and make sure there's minimal issues with the program as it relates to potential fraud, which, by the way, exists in pretty much every federal program.
So, Matthew, I just want to make clear, I learned from Obama phone from my Democratic great aunt who called it an Obama phone. She goes, "Este es mi Obama phone." So that's how I learned about the program, okay?
I get it. I mean,
it wasn't made up by Republicans. Like, this was literally my Aunt Margot, who's low income. And by the way, a very faithful Democrat, probably the only one in my family. And she was the one who introduced me to it. But yes, as you mentioned, there were a lot of concerns about fraud originally about 5-10 years ago. Yes.
Yeah, and that's largely been cleaned up. And the Obama phone kind of name does both connotate good things for those who supported Obama and bad things for those
like anything else.
Now, I will say that one point that's really important is the fact of the matter is this program was started by Ronald Reagan and further expanded by George W. Bush. So this is actually a Republican program initiated in the mid-'80s that has now turned into a wireless broadband program to support the same population. So why has this become politicized? It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, let's say whoever it is who wants people to have less internet access, what would be the reason to do that anyway?
What? I'm sorry, could you ask the question again?
Yeah, of course. Sure. Whoever it may be who want fewer people to have reliable internet access, what's the purpose of that anyway? Who's going to benefit from that anyway?
Great question. I got to come back on the show more often. I never get these questions on like major network channels. They're like, oh, let's keep it like very much in the middle. Yeah. Let me tell you why. Because it's a great political thing to constantly bring up. And so the idea that you can score political points largely by denigrating or undermining the program is really, kind of the mantra that we've seen from the FCC. And it's really frustrating because at the end of the day, all we're trying to do as a private business owner, and many of my competitors are in the same position, is just provide the service to those who need it. And as a business, we're trying to earn a profit just like everyone else. And our whole purpose here is let's get this service out to as many Americans as we can, especially now. I mean, you've got COVID-19, you've got massive unemployment, you have all these people who currently don't have the service, and there have been very direct efforts to undermine the program.
Well, Matthew, we're glad you like our questions. We're not used to hearing that as television hosts.
I mean, we go on network shows all the time, but I think our shows are better.
Yes, I'm going to say, give me more of these programs. I like this. Let's talk truth.
Okay, well, we're so happy to have you here, Matthew, and thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Yeah, good to see
Thank you
Matthew.
so much.
Yep.
Really appreciate it.
So you have no idea all the controversy behind Obama phones.
I did not know about it.
Oh, that's like a whole.
Also,
that's like a whole subgenre.
I did not know you have one aunt who is a
Democrat. So I come from a very large Cuban family, so you can imagine there's not a lot of Democrats. But the grandma with an Obama phone was a Democrat. And she's the one who taught me. So, I got a cell phone at 16. My family's upper middle class, so I never needed one of those phones. But my aunt was always a constant reminder of what it was like to, live in the world of, Obama phones. Anyway, that was great.
That is interesting. What do you mean we ask real questions? Of course I ask real questions. What do you guys expect?
Everyone loves bullying journalists. I'm glad. And television hosts and anyone who produces content. Yeah. And I think it's really hard to do our job, folks.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
You have to know a little bit about everything. It's not really easy.
Yeah.
So, not always easy. But anyway, we're lining up our first guest here. How you doing, Julia?
I'm doing fine.
You're doing fine?
I'm doing fine.
You alive there?
Anyway, New York is opening up, so I'm looking forward to outdoor dining. I'm looking forward to indoor dining. At least I can go get food. I can sit there. I can get my smoothie. I can get my latte. I can, I haven't got like a tequila yet. That's on the agenda.
Well, anyway, switching gears, our next guest is the founder and chairman of J.A. Forlines Family Office. Welcome, John. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Davey. Hi, Julia.
Hey, John. Good to have you on the program. First question. People's behavior change during a crisis like this pandemic that we're still facing. What is the one common, say, behavioral mistake that you see people make during a crisis that you think people should fix?
I'm not sure they can fix it. But I guess the main one, especially when you have an event like this that happens so quickly, is failure to reset reference points. So, for example, people think automatically that something's going to end really quickly. And you can see that in a segment of the population already where they're not really have adjusted their behaviors and there's consequences to that. The main one we're talking about here is that there's so many people unemployed by the lockdown, and there's an uncertainty whether or not they're going to be. A lot of those people are going to go back to work, particularly in those industries like leisure and travel, etc.
Yeah, so, John, we haven't really confronted this new reality. You bring up a really good point, which is like we haven't even reckoned with the fact that when unemployment runs out, where are these people going to work?
Yeah, it's a big number if you think about it. I saw a number recently, a couple relevant facts. There's about 30% of people who are absolutely depending on that income. And then there's about 60% of the people who were let go who essentially are making more money on that income. So are those jobs going to be there when they get back? Will their behavior change because they're all of a sudden making less money if those jobs do appear? So the uncertainties are in my mind, far outstrip whatever we see in things like the stock market or pronouncements by public officials, et cetera.
Yeah, speaking of that, you're from a family office. Obviously, you have to think about investing and long-term returns, et cetera. What do you think about, the state of the economy and the stock market and, a lot of this quantitative easing going on and all of that? What is the medium-term picture for the U.S. economy?
The medium term is pretty negative, meaning maybe the next 3 to 6 months. So, and I don't think that's going to change just for some of the reasons, David, you mentioned, which are the first part of the stimulus is going to run out. There'll be a debate on whether or not the rest or more can continue in the same fashion, which of course won't happen. And therefore we'll probably be on some rocky straits for a while, both in public markets and also in people's perceptions. I think that's the sort of the near to medium term. I think long term we're fine. So if you're a long-term investor, now's a time to really just hold tight. If you're conservatively allocated and you've got your plan, there's no reason to really change that other than I would say you need to save. You need to put money aside in case people like me are wrong and it's a lot longer.
Yeah, look, John, David and I, we talked about this on our show and many other shows, which is what you said, more people are making, a lot of people are making more from claiming unemployment benefits than their regular job because of the extra, $600 a week bonus that lasts until the end of July. From what you see, do you see more people are saving that or more people are using that to support their local businesses?
I think it's a combination. I think initially it was saved. You saw a big jump in if you looked at the April personal income numbers, you saw a big jump in personal income and you saw a big jump in initial savings, and then consumption started to drop. And I think it'll continue to drop as people realize that $600 is going to run out. And then, it's sort of like the double whammy. Think about the people who are unemployed are in these primarily low wage jobs in travel and leisure and things like that, where it's not clear when they're going to go back to work. And so turning it around the other way, where's the demand going to come from? Are people going to just start traveling on, public transportation and air and going to resorts and assembling in large numbers? The answer is probably no.
Yeah, John, but, I want to end on a positive note. You really think that the U.S. economy will recover from this? This too shall pass, I hope?
Absolutely. There's no question. In fact, many of the long-term vehicles that we're associated with, of course, is venture capital and private equity. I'm perfectly happy to be reinvesting in those vehicles just because I think the long-term is going to be fine. I think the issue is what's the interim going to look like, and is it going to be, is it going to be shocking, and is it going to be very uncertain, and how people are going to react to that? I think, for example, the political and social stuff that you've seen add to that uncertainty. There's a behavioral concept that if there's cognitive stress associated with decision making, and that's certainly in case with political and social unrest, political division that is, and social unrest, then people tend to make very bad decisions. They go out in public without their mask, or they go in closed spaces without their mask, or they do crazy things. And along with that drags on short term and medium term. That's bad, but long term, the U.S. will be fine. There's a great quote from Hume that said, "Look, there's wars and pestilence, and whole countries are wiped out, and in just a matter of a couple of years, everything's back." To where it was. And I think that's the case here.
Well, from your mouth to God's ears, because I'm ready to get back to normal. John, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you, David. Thank you,
Julie. Woo.
That was a great show.
That was great. I mean, by the way, I obviously I can't wait to travel again.
So Julia likes sports and travel. So right now she's like 0-2.
Yeah, there's no more cruise to take. Flying is sort of.
But you are an introvert, so the social distancing wasn't that bad for you.
It wasn't that bad for
dying.
me. It wasn't that bad. It was like introvert bliss.
Oh, I want to go. I'm like in the mood to go to summer camp now. Like, I'm done. So anyway, that's the end of our show.
Yeah.
Thank you all for watching.
Thank you for watching.
This is not a therapy session. So follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yeah, we'll see you back here next week.